Hi everyone, my name is Jamie, and if you haven't already checked out the Twitch channel, we stream every Monday, Tuesday and Thursday playing a series of community games. So come check out the channel over at twitch.tv/Viva la Cabrita. Over on the channel, we are big Pokemon fans. We have stream avatars every stream, debate which shiny Pokemon are the coolest, and have several duels and battle royales throughout the course of the stream, as well as even play a little bit of Pokemon Unite. Although over the course of lockdown, Pokemon started to rise in popularity, more specifically speaking, the Pokemon Trading Card Game. YouTube and Twitch in particular were flooded with booster box openings and pack openings. While Pokemon was trending as of late, Pokemon for me, in particular the trading card game, has always been very prominent throughout my life. I got into the game around 1999 when the base set was just released, collected and went to local Toys R Us leagues until around 2002, before moving on to other TCGs and then later returning to the Pokemon trading card game in 2009 and 2010. With Pokemon once again trending, I thought I'd put together a list of my personal top 10 cards from throughout my time playing, as well as being involved within the game. Now while you might be thinking, who is this guy giving me advice about what the best cards in existence are? Well, to that I would say I've won multiple battle roads, topped various different city championships and regional events while coming third at the UK National Championships and playing in the Pokemon World Championships on a few different occasions. Later I then got accepted as a commentator for the official Pokemon International Company, commentating and presenting at various different European international events and regional championships. Here's a picture of me doing commentary, here's another picture of me doing commentary, and oh look, here's another picture of me doing commentary. So as you can imagine, I've been in and around the Pokemon trading card game for a fair amount of time. I will also mention that this list that I've drawn up is completely based off my own personal opinion and experiences, although I do realise that some of the cards that are used in this list are there for competitive reasons, and that not everyone watching might be knowledgeable as to how to play the trading card game. Keeping that in mind, I will try and break down the metagame at that moment in time and make it in some way kind of understandable even if you're not familiar with the game. And finally, of course, if you do like content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. And with all that said, let's get into the countdown.
Number 10.
At number 10 is SEISMITOAD-EX. This card more or less dominated the format in both standard and expanded when it was released, and saw play in a variety of different decks. Because this card utilised just one double colorless energy to attack, it meant that loads of different decks could use it, even as just a one-off, if they didn't want to focus their entire deck around it. SEISMITOAD in short was a basic EX Pokemon that had 180 HP, a hefty retreat cost and that was weak to grass, and had 2 attacks. The second was in most cases more or less irrelevant, although later it did start to see some play, but it was the first attack Quaking Punch, which is what all the hype was about. Quaking Punch did 30 damage, but prevented your opponent on the following turn from using any item cards. When you consider that at least a third of your deck will be filled with item cards, this is a pretty big deal, and even supporter cards in the Pokemon trading card game you can only use once per turn. SEISMITOAD was released in Furious Fists, although when Phantom Forces came out, this was a metagame changer, and I mean literally a metagame changer. A new card that came out called Lysander's Trump Card meant that both players had to shuffle their discard piles into their deck, so pretty early on we worked out that you could play cards like Crushing Hammer to deny your opponent energy, and cards like Hypnotoxic Laser to pump up the damage outlets and potentially putting them to sleep, and because they're item locked, they're unable to use cards like Switch. On top of that, you also had cards like VS Seeker in the format to revive supporters, so you could pretty much spam Team Flare's Grunt over and over again, and if they are able to hit you back and do a little bit of damage, you had cards like Super Scoop Up where you were able just to pick up your SEISMITOAD with all the damage counters on it and put it straight back down onto your bench. And once you'd run out of resources, you just play Lysander's Trump Card and repeat the cycle. We discovered the strategy pretty early on and were able to take a few tournaments by surprise, but it wasn't too long before this just became the norm. Even later when this deck was so OP, Lysander's Trump Card eventually got banned. All in all, SEISMITOAD-EX was a super fun card to play, although an absolute nightmare if you're playing against it.
Number 9.
At number 9 we have MILOTIC from Primal Clash. This is a bit of a weird inclusion, but I remember a while back when Night March was a big deck, that some people mentioned playing a 1/1 line of MILOTIC. The idea was that if you could evolve your Feebas into a MILOTIC, you could then search your discard pile for one card and put it into your hand with its Sparkling Ripples ability. Instead of playing Switch, you'd also play cards like Super Scoop Up, so you could spam this effect, getting back vital cards at vital moments in the game. Since all of your Pokemon were basic Pokemon anyway and you wouldn't need to evolve them, using Super Scoop Up was a means of retreating as well as bringing back your MILOTIC so you can reuse its ability. I'm not sure if this idea stems from the UK or the US, but I remember a few times playing in Europe using this MILOTIC Night March build, and people were completely baffled and taken back by how good it was, which was pretty funny for me at the time because I thought it was just the standard.
Number 8.
At 8th spot comes Pichu from the Neo Genesis set. So back in 1999-2000, when the internet wasn't what it's become today, most of the news that we were able to obtain about the latest sets coming out or the latest games usually came from TV or even magazines. I remember that I found a small store that sold furniture close to where I lived, and in the back of that store they had a random box of Pokémon cards, and that being a Japanese Neo Genesis set. Each pack was around £3.50 to £4, which is pretty pricey when you're around 10 years old, although I did purchase 1 or 2 packs and pulled a Neo Genesis Pichu. Keeping in mind that the Johto set or even Generation 2 hadn't been released yet, and we only had a few teasers like Donphan or Togepi or Ho-Oh to name a few, I was over the moon when I pulled it. So much so I used to take it with me everywhere. To school to flash off to everyone, and even when I used to go out I used to carry it with me. One day I was wearing a pair of jeans and I had the card in my pocket, and of course without a sleeve because who used a sleeve back in those days, although when I arrived home and took it out of my pocket, it'd been bent and creased all over. I was distraught. Luckily in time I got over it, and my friend even gave me another one for my birthday when the set had finally been released, but for around 2 or 3 months I felt like I was carrying around with me a hidden treasure.
Number 7.
At number 7 and back to the more competitive side of things comes BELLSPROUT from the HEARTGOLD SOULSILVER TRIUMPHANT set. This story goes back to when Noble Victories just came out, just before EXs came into the format. From the set had a couple of cards such as Vanillux, which had the double freeze attack, and the idea of the deck being that you'd use a double freeze attack which did 40 damage for each coin that you flipped, and if one of those were heads, then the defending Pokemon would then be paralyzed. Then if you paired that with the Victini, which had the Victory Star ability, which meant that you can reflip the coins if you wanted to, and then Vileplume, which had item lock so you couldn't use cards like Switch to retreat your paralyzed Pokemon, so the deck was pretty hard to beat. I remember that at one event I played Reshiram Typhlosion, a mono fire deck that hit hard for 120 damage with the aid of Typhlosion's Afterburner ability. And in that I played just the one BELLSPROUT which had the Inviting Scent attack, switching your opponent's active Pokemon with a Pokemon on their bench. I got paired against a player at City Championships who was playing the Vanillux deck, and as I expected I got into the lock and was unable to get out of it. What made it worse is that Vanillux being a water type was hitting weakness on my Reshiram and knocking out my Typhlosions. Once a Reshiram was knocked out, I was able to promote my BELLSPROUT, attach a single energy since it was a colourless cost, and bring up the Vileplume on the bench. Vileplume has a retreat cost of 2, and considering that both players can't use item cards, it really leaves just a single double colourless energy attachment being the only way that you're able to retreat that Pokemon. Anyway, in short, my opponent missed the double colourless energy, and I was able to begin attacking with Reshiram, which hit perfect numbers on Vileplume to knock it out, 120 damage to be precise, and also by knocking it out gave me access to item cards again, so I could use cards like Switch when Vanillux became active and paralyzed my Pokemon. Junkan was also in the format at the time, which most people played 4 of, so the game was pretty much smooth sailing as of there. Again, just another quirky tech and all in all, a funny story to tell.
Number 6.
At number 6 we have Plasma KLINKLANG from the Plasma Storm set. When Plasma Freeze was released, as was also the best deck in the format, also known as Plasma. The deck featured Plasma Kyurem as your main attacker, Thundurus EX for its energy acceleration, and Deoxys EX which allowed you to hit higher numbers with its power connectability. You even had cards like Colress Machine at the time to stack energy on your Pokemon quicker, and overall the deck was just very OP. The deck did have its flaws though, that being that it mostly relied on EX Pokemon minus the Kyurem, and that the deck mostly plays special energy. Since the deck was super expensive at the time and Nationals was fast approaching, meaning that all the cards were highly sought after, I decided not to play it and to play KLINKLANG instead. Plasma KLINKLANG had the ability Plasma Steel, which meant that none of your opponent's EX Pokemon could deal any damage to your Steel type Pokemon. Cobalion EX also for 1 Steel energy had the Righteous Edge attack, which dealt 30 damage and discarded special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon, meaning that you could just keep pushing them back on energy attachments. Later I believe I also ran the KLINKLANG from Black and White, so I could utilize cards like Max Potion, but all in all it was a deck that I had a lot of fun playing. I went to a Battle Roads at the time and ended up winning the tournament, playing several Plasma decks throughout the course of the day.
Number 5.
At number 5 we have Trevenant from the X and Y base set. This card paired very well with Wally from Roaring Skies, as if you started with the Phantump, you could search out a Wally from your deck and evolve your Phantump into a Trevenant, which had the Forest Cursed ability, blocking your opponents from playing any item cards. If you're able to go first and pull this off, it can be a really big play, especially if your opponent, because it means that they have to search for something like a Lysander to switch the Trevenant with another Pokemon and enabling them to use items again. Pulling this combo off as well wasn't so difficult either, as Shaymin EX had just been released into the format, and you had cards like Ultra Ball and Level Ball to search out both Shaymin EX and Jirachi EX to search you out supporter cards. Overall, I had a lot of fun playing Trevenant, and it was actually the deck that I came third at the UK Nationals with in 2015, as well as doing pretty well in the expanded format, pairing it with both Excelgor and Dusknoir. Again, a card that even still today in expanded, I enjoy playing with a lot.
Number 4.
In fourth spot is GENGAR-EX. As I mentioned previously that with Trevenant, I came third at the UK National Championships. There was just one deck that particularly gave me a hard time though, and that deck being Primal Groudon-EX. Primal Groudon-EX had the barrier effect, meaning that it couldn't be targeted, so cards like Crushing Hammer, Hypnotoxic Laser, and so on wouldn't have any effect on it. This was pretty problematic for my deck since the damage that I mostly did came from the Shaman EX loop, and that only did 50 damage. This Groudon, when set up, could pretty much tank everything in its path, although its only major flaw was that it took quite a bit of time to set it up. My friend convinced me the night before the tournament to play GENGAR-EX, but in the end I decided to go for it, and it ended up being a game changer and arguably my MVP of the tournament. With the Stadium card Verbank City Gym, it was able to one-shot opposing Shaman EXs with a Muscle Band and poison damage with its Dark Corridor attack, and more importantly have an out to taking down these huge Primal Groudons, and would slowly get knocked out due to attacking and the poison damage. What was even better about using Gengar's Dark Corridor attack was that it retreated to the bench, meaning you could then promote a Trevenant and maintain the item lock while protecting your Gengar. It won me my opening game of the tournament, and also the game that got me into top 8, and even the game in top 8 which I won due to GENGAR-EX.
Number 3.
In third place is Pikachu from the Jungle set. So the story with this card is that I had a friend who went over to the US and purchased a Jungle Booster Pack, which in the UK we didn't have at that moment. The only set that we had released to us at that moment was the base set. I remember that when he returned I made a trade with him, which consisted of my base set Pikachu for his Jungle Pikachu. Considering the Pikachu from the Jungle set hadn't been released in the UK, it was extremely rare and valuable, and no one really knew much about it since no one really used the internet at that time. I became pretty popular and in high demand with several people trying to trade it off me. In most cases I refused, even refusing to trade it back to the original person that I had traded my Pikachu for. It wasn't too long before the Jungle set was then later released in the UK, and everyone was able to own a copy since it was just a common card. My popularity went from an all-time high to being pretty low in just a space of a couple of months.
Number 2.
Coming in at second place is my favourite Pokemon in Donphan Prime. When I got back into playing the Pokémon Trading Card Game in around 2009-2010, I started playing the Diamond and Pearl era, although they announced an early rotation since there were some issues with Sableye from Stormfront and that it was too broken with the new black and white rules. So I quickly adapted myself to the HEARTGOLD SOULSILVER format and picked up Donphan Prime. I played a deck at the time which I built on the go, which some people refer to as Donphan Dragons. Basically the idea is that you would use Donphan's Earthquake attack, which you would then put recoil damage onto your bench dragons, and that would later fuel for their Outrage attacks for a single double colorless energy. Across the format you had Donphan with a plus power, which for 60 damage times 2 because of the weakness, and a plus power was enough to one-shot opposing Zekroms, and having your own Zekrom in the deck meant that you were able to deal with other popular cards in the format like Yanmega Prime through weakness. I played a lot of different variants of this deck throughout the season, and even winning a couple of battle roads at the time. And with that, it's still one of my favourite accomplishments that I have to date in the Pokémon Trading Card Game.
Number 1.
And finally the big number 1, and at number 1 we have Charizard from the base set. This card is so iconic and has even seen multiple re-releases including in the Evolution set. So the year was 1999, the final day of school before we had the Christmas break, and I leave my classroom and head outside to find my mum. She had picked up 2 booster packs, one for me and another one for my brother, so I took one, proceeded to open it, and inside was a base set Charizard. I think that as a kid that might have been one of my happiest memories. Anyone who was a kid around this time or even knew anything about Pokemon during this period knew how prestigious this card was. There was even a kid on the playground who had one of these cards, but because it was such a myth and not many people had the opportunity to see one, he would even charge people a couple of pennies just to see the card. If ever there were a day that I felt like I had conquered the Elite Four and became a Pokemon Master, it was that day. And so there you pretty much have it. That was my top 10 Pokemon cards from my time being in and around the Pokemon Trading Card Game. Again, this video is completely opinionated and based off my own personal experiences. However, I would love to hear what your top 10 cards of all time are. Be sure to stick it in the comment section below, and of course if you do like this type of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and of course like this video. I'll also leave my top 10 Jackbox Party Pack games video at the end of this video if you would like to check out more top 10 videos. Thanks very much for watching, and again my name is Jamie aka Viva la Cabrita, and I will see you all in the next video.